We're talking about live sports. We're talking about the future. Why don't we start out with some introductions. Peter Gallagher, COO of Verizon Digital Media Services. Introduce yourself. Let the audience know what you do there.
Sure. So Verizon Digital Media is a platform company that really focuses on content to experience. So we have solutions focused on e-commerce and web acceleration, or a full suite of products to help with either linear, television over the top, live events, or video on demand. And really what makes us different is how we think about quality and how we stream to the end consumer. And a lot of people use quality as a buzzword, but really what are we focused on? How do we increase audience engagement by having higher bit rates and quality of streams? How do we minimize buffering and improve start time? Also, how do we drive monetization and engagement by doing a unique server-side ad insertion process that allows us to target individual ads to end consumers. So as we insert advertisements into our live events or linear streams, it's really a broadcast quality experience of how we transition from ads back into content. And I'm the COO there, which means I run all of our services and operations, and we have one specific group where we run live events as a managed service, and I think that's what we're going to focus on today.
Terrific. And our other panelist is Kyle McDonald. He's the head of Yahoo Sports Partnerships. Kyle, introduce yourself and let everybody know what you do.
Hi, yes, I oversee the global partnerships for Yahoo Sports, which as a little over a week ago is now part of the Oath family of brands. And so Peter and I and his team have gotten the green light to start working together. And so we have a couple of big projects coming up that we're excited to work with Peter and his team on.
Okay, and I'll introduce myself as well. I'm Troy Dreyer. I'm a senior associate editor at Streaming Media. That's an online magazine. Hopefully it's a daily destination for you. And you might know our conference that's here in town, not too far away, every May, Streaming Media East. Please drop by. So we're here to talk about the future of live sports. And with you two, I think we're here to talk about the future of Oath as well, which is still sort of a mystery to some of us. Verizon's recent acquisition of Yahoo Now brings together Yahoo and AOL and Verizon Digital Media Services. It's all under one bundle. What's the future of Oath and what's the future of live sports?
Well, I think we're very bullish on the future of Oath. I personally joined Yahoo around a year ago with the acquisition pending, and was really energized and excited about the number of consumers we reach. We reach over 1 billion consumers worldwide. You look at the Verizon family of brands, the Go90, the Verizon Wireless, you look at what Peter and his team do, you look at all the brands under AOL, all the different ad platform plays, you look at all that we do at Yahoo, Yahoo Sports, Yahoo Finance, and on and on. And just the number of people that we reach, the distribution points that we have, and our ability to really rally around things like big live events are a big part of what makes me excited to be a part of the new organization.
It is a tremendous amount of resources on the content side and the technical side. What are you guys going to emphasize going future with live sports?
Well, I think if you look at our business as a flywheel with 3 key components, we have content and audience, which, as you just said, we picked up some tremendous brands within Yahoo. So that's one leg of the stool, or one part of the flywheel. The second thing is distribution, which is what Verizon brings, is how do we really push things out to IP and mobile connected devices to help the new consumption model. And then the third is monetization, which is really how do we help publishers and the new content aggregators really monetize the content as they're trying to reach the new audience. And that's really our focus. It's the holistic flywheel. It's not just one piece of that.
Absolutely, and you guys are totally in the position to make that happen. Well, let's give the people what they came for, which is the future of live sports. Tell me where live sports online is right now, where it's going to be 5, 10 years in the future.
Well, I think that live sports over the top has been around for a while, but now it's starting to happen at scale. The conversations I was having with publishers and other folks in the industry was this push towards VOD as we went over the top. And there's a lot in VOD, and it's very relevant. But with millennials' desire to stay in touch with what's happening now and be connected is really what's pushing live events. And no longer are people forced to just carry live events that are programmed on linear television and channels. They can now do an infinite number of events simultaneously as they drive niche audiences to consumers.
And I think that's a key point on the niche audiences. We obviously at Yahoo Sports have had partnerships for a long time with NBC Sports, with MLB, with NHL, PGA Tour, and we do live events with all those folks and more. And so we are certainly excited about more live events at scale, and the one we're doing with the NFL later this year. That said, I think when you look at the future, there's a really tremendous opportunity to tap into smaller scale audiences, but audiences that are really extremely passionate about a particular sport, about a particular type of event, and then to think about how do you target those audiences, how do you build experiences around them that may include things like merchandise or other things that if you're an enthusiast of cycling, say, and the NBC Gold OTT package that they're rolling out, how do you start to build that into an entire ecosystem that really builds around someone's passion? So, there's certainly the big events that everybody cares about and that you can get really mass audiences to watch. But there's also a lot of opportunity around events that may grab a smaller aggregate audience, but maybe a much more passionate, much more engaged audience. You start to leverage those touch points into building something much more exciting.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. So as people are still dabbling and experimenting with these live events that as you said, may not have as much audience as individual, if I look at them in aggregate and I really improve how I'm doing my monetization and targeting of ads so the CPMs go up, that's really going to help people support the content licensing that's needed to drive the business and get more and more content, and also make the value of these individual events much greater. I think what we're going to start to see longer term in live events is how do I bring new experiences that I can't get in television with AR and VR, and how do I connect with other friends as I experience these types of events? And those are some of the things we're really experimenting with right now.
That sounds exciting. What are the resources that you guys need to make live events a success?
Well, for us, as I said, it's really about scale. So how do you quickly deal with the variability of audiences in these platforms? It's really unpredictable right now. For premium events, you're going to have huge audiences, and in those situations, it's about how quickly do I achieve scale? Because it's not really, I don't want to say it's easy to stream 3 or 6 million users concurrently once you hit that level, but it's how quickly can I deal with the flash traffic when everyone is joining something that's starting at the same time, and how quickly can I get up to there? That's when you see a lot of failures and issues out that you read about now. And what we really focus on is how do we leverage the cloud for that scaling rather than build dedicated infrastructure specifically for one-off events. How do we create those things at scale? And the second thing is, how do we create tools and simplicity for people running these events so that, again, you don't need to have people that have a broadcast television background and production experience? How do I have easy tools? So if I'm doing, a collegiate sport that doesn't have huge audience, or, an NBA game, how do I have simple tools that allow me to have a production or a broadcast quality experience over the top? And those are some of the key resources that we focus on building.
Mm-hmm. And the resources that I need are to have Peter and his team to do it for me, so I don't have to figure it out. But I'm certainly much more on the relationship and the deal side, and it's certainly of critical importance when we're working with with a marquee partner, or any of our partners for that matter, that we deliver on time and a really quality experience that we don't have any room for failure. And I tell people that I've been in this business longer than I care to admit, and I remember sort of some of the early things we were working on, trying to stream live video that's postage stamp sized and awful quality, and there were failures on a regular basis. And so for us to have come to where we are today, when I'll be in one room watching a live event. My kids are on another room streaming, some other event that they're watching, whether it's esports or whether it's something on Netflix. But the fact that sort of all this has really reached a level where it, works seamlessly is a pretty amazing thing to see.
Don't forget the buffering back then too.
I've seen a little buffering.
Stamp-sized video. Oh yeah, it was terrible. Yeah, so let's get into the difficulties. And you kind of talked about it a little bit, Peter, about what makes it so hard to do an OTT sports stream well?
Well, let's just think about it operationally, leave the technology challenges aside a second, and that you have different scale events, as I said before. You might have, either if it's a collegiate sport or a high school sport where the production staff is not what you might find on broadcast television, and you don't really know when the event is going to start. So how do I actually program that and make that available in my consumer experience and draw an audience and keep them engaged when all of a sudden my event was supposed to start at the top of the hour, but now I'm 6 minutes in, and how do I keep people engaged? How do I deal with that? So how do I integrate a different content experience pre-event launch? That's one key challenge, is that unknown within that. The other thing is you don't know when commercial breaks are going to happen. Sometimes when things are carried on broadcast television, it's programmed, it's still a little bit chaotic because you don't know the exact time, but you do know, okay, before the next kickoff, we're going to go to break, and here's how long my ad pod is. But you don't have that kind of orchestration and communication with the field in sports for these over-the-top events. So you have to really be nimble and on your feet, managing the production and dropping in ads to be able to support monetization as well as the right production experience.
The other thing I can't overstate is just contingency planning. One of the things I've certainly spent some time in broadcast production trucks out at live events, and also a lot of the digital things that we do at Yahoo and other places. And one of the things you just can't count on, or you can always count on, is some unpredictability. Right? We just did our NBA draft live show from our Yahoo studios here in New York last week, and we ended up having a power outage and internet outage for a good portion of the day leading up. And so, you just as soon as you think you have it all figured out, suddenly you don't. And so I think to make sure that you've got all the right contingency planning in place can make a huge difference in whether you're successful or not when things go sideways.
Is the online viewer more or less forgiving than a broadcast viewer?
I don't know. If you're looking at Twitter, I think that can be equally unforgiving.
Something goes wrong, they're right there.
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, obviously, the scale of a broadcast event, if you have a significant failure, you're going to see a lot more traffic and negative activity. That said, the people who are watching these events, especially to the extent that you've are selling subscription or pay-per-view events and things like that, there's a very high expectation that this is going to work.
There absolutely is, which is why for us we focus as much on the reliability and the quality of the stream as we do on the other elements that are wrapped around the consumer experience and monetization, because there's a dramatic drop-off. People do not have the patience, back to what you said in the beginning. You were talking about the postage stamp and your buffering. People do not have the patience for that at all today. And when issues do occur, you see noticeable drop-offs in audience and a very slow kind of ramp to get that audience back during an event. So if you lose someone, at halftime, it takes a very long time to get them back.
And don't even look at your Twitter, because they are destroying you.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. That's a good way to get feedback. We focus on the platforms, and actually we know about issues and know things going on. We don't have to look at Twitter to find out there's a problem, but it's never good to get beat up on Twitter.
Kyle, are rights a special concern for over-the-top streaming?
Yeah, I think the way we look at it is we want to try and deliver a holistic experience, and so it's particularly going forward. Look, there's first there's just the question of what are the rights that are available, right? And then beyond that, it's really how do you understand, how do you put together a package that includes, however a person wants to be able to watch it, whether you want to watch the event live, whether you want to watch a cut down version of it later, whether you want to watch the entire event on demand later, whether you just want to watch highlights. Like one of the things that we're focused on, as after the Oath acquisition of Yahoo and the Verizon acquisition of Yahoo, and thinking about how do we take Yahoo Sports to sort of the next level, and what do we want to invest in? It's really about being that first screen for any sports fan, right? And so if you want to know what's going on, whether and you want to experience an event, whether you just have a couple minutes. There's 162 Dodger games every year, and I like to watch some of them. I certainly can't watch all of them, right? And so, a handful I'll watch in its entirety. A handful I'll catch the last few innings. Lots I'll just want to take a quick look and see, hey, what's going on because I know what's happening right now. Sometimes, like tomorrow morning, I'll probably just want to look and see, hey, what happened last night because I missed the entire thing, right? And so what we want to do is position ourselves and get the rights that are necessary to really help facilitate that, so that you can truly be the first screen and sort of reliably know, no matter how I want to experience this event, here's where I can go to experience it.
Okay, so I'm sure we have people in the audience who are here because they want to get into this area, because they want to make some money from it. Peter, could you guide us through the options for monetization with live sports?
Well, there's obviously opportunities for a subscription-based service. What we are focused on is how do we drive up the ad paradigm for revenue here. And we think back to some of the rights challenges. Some events you can have a predetermined ad load because you know what's going to happen. But in this world where you're dealing with tiered rights and people have first right of refusal on different events, and let's just say that you're going to carry an event and you don't even know that you have the rights to carry it until 24 hours in advance. It's extremely difficult to pre-sell your ad inventory for an event like that. So we are working on not only ad technology to help people manage their inventory, run campaigns, but also how do I do programmatic bidding of ads to do ad insertion for inventory that's not sold. So whether it's inventory I didn't sell in advance, or it's an event that I didn't know I was going to be carrying, and I want to try to optimize my monetization, how do I programmatically insert ads? And that's a thing that we're starting to see more and more interest in out in the market.
Kyle, same question, but a little bit sideways for you. From your perspective at Yahoo Sports, is it about monetizing the sports that you have rights to, or is there another way that the company profits from delivering that experience?
It's a combination of both. I mean, certainly when you look at the demand for advertising, the demand for quality video advertising that's a well-lit place that's around content that people really care about, that's really our best chance in a lot of ways to monetize. And so, to Peter's point, though, sometimes you don't have the ability to get all the inventory sold ahead of time. And so, to the extent that you can really figure out how to effectively monetize that in a programmatic fashion, is really valuable. I think it's something that we've got to get better at. I think it's something that's difficult to do. And so, we certainly, to the extent that we can sell premium, and have a long lead time into an event and really be able to put together comprehensive packages, that's generally going to be our first choice. That said, that's not always the choice, and so to have a variety of different monetization options, is important to us. That said, we also look at what we can do just to put the best consumer experience out there. And so, while monetization is a big piece of the equation, just delivering on what fans want is certainly important as well.
And part of that is the monetization beyond the live event itself. So when you're in a consumer-facing business, much like Kyle's team, and you're going to do an NFL game, because we got the exclusive rights to the London NFL. I'll do a little plug for you there.
We'll get there.
Yeah, okay. Well, but there is, I'm carrying this game, but how do I help use that as an event for people to discover what the rest of my consumer experience is, which helps bring in continued audience and continued viewership, and that's another intangible benefit as a consumer-facing property that people are seeing.
Absolutely right. Yep.
Let's get into that consumer experience a little bit. What can the online consumer get that the broadcast consumer doesn't get? Either one of you?
Yeah, I think, look, it's for me, it's much more about the breadth of content available, and whether you're interested in a college baseball game, whether you're interested in alternate views from an event that you really care about, all those things are available now, right? So instead of having just a linear stream, where everybody gets the same treatment, there are also ways you can integrate data, ways that you can foster other kinds of conversation and interactivity. And so I think all those things are a bigger part of what we'll be doing going forward. That said, I think delivering the story on the field is typically what people care about, and so you don't want to lose focus on sort of all the nice-to-have add-ons, right, when I think really delivering the core event and the competition on the field is why people love sports, and so that's always going to be the primary focus.
Yeah, I've seen online sports where they've had so many online components that you can enjoy. I'm thinking, where's the stream at the heart of this?
There's certainly a reason that there are at all these events trucks full of directors and people who are really experienced at putting this on, because a lot of time it's just kind of a paradox of choice, right? If you can look at 10 different things, it's hard to know what to look at. But during my I was prior at Fox Sports and did some work on the U.S. Open golf tournament, and there were 108 cameras, I think, or 118, or some ridiculous triple-digit number at that event, right? And so to think about what you need to be looking at any given time is hard enough if you're a seasoned director, much less if you're just a consumer that wants to see what's going on.
I was thinking about golf events as I said that. It's
Yeah.
kind of an embarrassment of riches.
No, it's the scale of the production there is really unlike, I think, anything I've seen in live sports.
Mm-hmm. I have a lot of fantastic online interactive options. Maybe too much?
Sometimes. That said, if you're able to follow and I think golf is different. NASCAR is different. Some of these more individual sports are different because there may be a favorite driver or favorite golfer that you care an extreme amount about. Some of the ISO cams for different soccer players and things like that, I think lose a lot of the context. So I think there's some, it depends some on sport as to what makes the most sense, but it's nice to have the choice if you want to watch it.
Mm-hmm. I mean, for the big broadcaster, the experience of what they can offer is so different than with linear. With linear, you have one channel, one stream. Peter, this opens it up. You can have so many things at one point. How does that change what you guys think about in providing the audience?
Well, I think one key thing we're seeing is supplemental experiences. Now, linear TV is not going to go away. I don't think that everyone is touting the demise of cable. I think you're going to see shrinking market share, but it's not going away. So how do I create supplemental experiences, like you said, with whether it's backstage experiences for concerts, or even how do I help people engage with the things or the players or personalities I'm interested in? If I'm a big fan of MMA and I have a favorite fighter, how do I follow that person through the weigh-in and some of their workouts, even before things are going to be aired on broadcast television? So that's kind of one paradigm, is how do I create supplemental experiences? And then the other thing, as I said, is how do I create unique experiences that are targeted for the mobile platform, where I create interactivity and AR and VR? So how do I really create camera views and experiences that I'm almost engaged with my friend who is not perhaps sitting with me at the venue, but we both feel that way. And that's the type of experience that we're really trying to move to in the mobile environment, and we're doing a lot of experimentation.
One of the things that we see a lot of activity on, we have a subscription product, Rivals.com, that's focused around college football, and it's amazing on the game days, right, and during the game window, the chatter that goes back and forth between subscribers and just the people who enjoy being in an experience with other people, whether they're people that they've gotten to know through digital communities, or whether they're people that you went to school with and you have something in common. And so I think I'm very curious to see how that evolves over the short term, because a lot of the VR and AR experiences I've seen are interesting, right? But after the sort of the first 5 minutes, you're like, okay, I get it. This is what's next. If you can really enable a co-viewing experience, so I can watch a football game with my dad, I care about that, right? And so I think that, to me, is when we can start to deliver some of those experiences become a lot more interesting.
Mm-hmm. Kyle, does that idea that you can present many things at one point, offerings, and, as opposed to what we can do with linear. Does that change the back-end rights at all? Does that change what you do?
It does, absolutely. And I think, a few years ago, a lot of those rights would be in somewhat gray areas, right? Because there would be things that really hadn't been thought of or hadn't really been executed on in any significant way. And so it would be somewhat unclear. Now everyone who is working on these different right deals, it's much more clear what the different expressions are out there, what the different ways that you can put these rights to use. And so I think we're all getting more and more sophisticated about trying to make sure everything is included, accounted for, and that there are very few gray areas. That said, I think with the pace of innovation, there are always going to be a few gray areas and things that we'll have to kind of rely on going back and working with our partners to understand the right way to do things. But I would say there's been a tremendous shift in the amount of sort of gray area around these digital experiences from a few years ago to what it looks like today.
Mm-hmm. Peter, I have in my notes here that last year you facilitated the streaming of 26,000 live events, sometimes hundreds in a single day.
Right.
Guide us into that, because that's a unique perspective. What allows you to do that, and what can the audience members come up with for their own streaming strategy to kind of get to that point?
Well, here's what you need to think about if you're going to go into live events and manage it at scale is what platform do I have that can deal with the audience, but then operationally, how do I deal with the fluctuations of schedule? So we have a unique way to schedule our people and our resources to deal with that fluctuation. And we have a number of customers that use our platforms in a self-service way, and they have a set amount of capacity from a people standpoint of what they can do. And then when they hit a surplus of a specific threshold because they want to drive a peak and they don't want to hire people, they look to us to help out. So we can either do it part and parcel or support those customers who want to have a steady state, manage it, and then there's variability and threshold. That could drive a lot of cost. And how do I manage the cost for these things so these are economically viable?
Mm-hmm. So Kyle, now let's get to the NFL, the big deal. You guys did it a couple years ago.
That's right.
You're doing it again.
That's right.
What did you learn? What you going to do different this time around?
So I think the thing that we learned is really what we can pull off as a company, and this was obviously a couple of years ago, and so this is prior to my involvement, so I can take no credit, but it was really something that Yahoo's a very large company, a lot of different audience touch points, and the team I think did an incredible job of building awareness and getting the game out in front of people, and we were able to really deliver on the promise of driving a significant audience to. It's an exclusive game. As for my West Coast bias, it's a 6 a.m. start time, so it's a little challenging there. But we were able to drive a tremendous audience, and so learning the lessons of how we're able to coordinate across the organization to really make that work is sort of our next challenge now that we're a much bigger organization with all the AOL brands and Verizon all under one roof now, and so that's something we're really excited about. Certainly, September 24th is when the Ravens and Jaguars game is over in London, so we have a very short amount of time. And that's a lot of what Peter and his team and I have been working on, are some of the plans around how we're going to make that happen.
Mm-hmm. I think one lesson learned from last time this was done was around metrics and reporting. Right? There's a lot of at stake with something that's this high-profile event, and you need to think well in advance about how do I define success and what are the things that I need to do to measure success from. How much audience on which platform at what point in time. And then you have your advertisers and other folks who really want to make sure that there's accountability that what they've paid for comes to fruition. So how are you going to be able to track and manage that as well? So, there's tons of lessons learned here, but I think one thing that we're looking at this time, because this NFL deal goes beyond Yahoo Sports to all of the different Verizon properties, is how do we make sure that we have that unified view into what's going on in the game to all the constituents that have a stake in the value of the event.
And it's really about understanding all those questions that you'll want to have answered, well before you've considered them, because a lot of times going back and getting the data is impossible.
Yeah, right. You can't get it. You can't get it afterwards when they want it in real time.
It sounds like a huge amount of data to pull together and make easily accessible.
Yeah.
So a lot of planning going on right now?
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Vacations on hold?
Yeah. Before this all started, I had black hair.
No pressure or anything?
Yeah.
Peter, what's your greatest live sports streaming success?
What's the biggest success? That's a tough one. I guess, as I said, we did a high-profile professional sports event where we were able to ramp and deal with about 1.5 to 2 million concurrent users within seconds. The things that keep me up at night are this scalability issue. At least that's my role within the organization, is make sure these things run in a flawless way. And we spend so much time making sure that we have the right quality of experience and maintain audience, and testing and beating on our systems to have that kind of audience engagement rapidly with flash traffic is something that we're proud of, and I'm really proud of.
That was a specific event you were at?
It was, and I don't know that I'm cleared to say what it is from the client. So
Okay.
it was one of the major professional sports leagues. We were doing some of their finals. So.
All right, Kyle, same question, hopefully with names.
I'll have to say the NFL game on September 24th that's upcoming is going to be our most successful. So I think that the amount of work and planning that's going into it, we're really excited about what we're going to be able to pull off. And so that's 100% focus, sort of no looking in the rearview mirror right now.
And are you going to be tempting people to watch it, to enjoy some enhanced features, I should say?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's certainly, when you go back to sort of the contractual restrictions and things that you can and can't do, that's a lot of what we're working through right now. But like I say, the focus first and foremost will be delivering, the game in a flawless fashion, right? And then, to the extent that we can add on to that and make it better, we certainly will.
Peter, you talked a little bit about scale, and certainly that's important for a lot of people. If the people who are able to enjoy a little overnight success, adding a lot of users quickly, a lot of views quickly, that can be a real struggle to keep up with that. You have experience with that. How does someone manage success in this area without getting overloaded?
Well, for those that are thinking about building the platforms themselves, it's how do I create automation, and how do I actually look at the engagement with the audience, and not only just worry about spinning up and managing capacity, but think about transaction time. So if I have users joining a session, how do I look at video start time, and how long is the transaction taking for them to actually authenticate and initiate the stream, and look at the performance of the different components in the technology architecture to say, here are the bottlenecks and here are the areas where I need to scale, and have the right tools to look at those dynamic attributes in real time and scale. I would make sure you think about your platforms that way if you're building them yourselves. How do I get real-time metrics to manage my capacity?
So we've talked a little bit about social media, about sharing. I think we got to go into a little more. It seems so important to the future of live sports and how people are going to be watching sports online. What are your thoughts about managing the social experience? Kyle?
To me, it's really about how do you make that part of the entire story, right? And how do you use that as a way to build awareness and build up? And obviously, one of the beauties of the social world that we live in is that there are very addressable communities that have passions around these different events. And so I think being very thoughtful about how you activate against those communities to drive that awareness and to drive people to actually tune in. Because at the end of the day, if people aren't watching your streams and firing ads or buying subscriptions or whatever monetization that you're going after, you're not going to win. And so I think we really think about it as how do you work with social to sort of build those audiences and really reach the right audiences at the right time.
Peter, how do you integrate social in a way that feeds the live video?
What we're doing is building tools to be able to push content in near real time from a specific event, whether it's a clip or some other segment, out to social media so that people can see what's happening now and then quickly go and join live action. That's what we're doing right now a lot. We are looking to see how we can syndicate content out into those social media channels. They're getting much more mature in how they can deal with going live themselves. So now we're viewing that in the next phase as how is that just another syndication path for the content of going to owned and operated properties, but then simulcasting in those other events, which technically is sometimes easy, not so easy when you're managing the rights.
That's right, that's right. But I think one of the things that as you think about sort of rights profile going forward, we're certainly going to be looking for ability to do live look-ins and other things that we can help hook a user and bring them into an event, or help give some historical context around an event that maybe a user wouldn't care about otherwise, right? So you can bring in a more casual audience too. So
You're talking about a look-in on like a broadcast feed?
yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So I think as news is breaking, as sort of momentous things are happening in the world of sports, to be able to get that in front of someone so that they can really engage and understand, oh hey, this is the story, this is why I want to watch, this is why I care. That's what we're in the business of.
And get the broadcasters, say, to kind of plug the online and...
Certainly to some extent. I was thinking of it more of the direction of using social as a way to reach maybe a more casual audience, to bring them into a broadcast or bring them into a digital stream. I think that I'm certainly like all of us see things on social media that you would engage with or interact with, where you'd say, hey, I didn't really realize that was happening, or I didn't know that was even a thing, right? And suddenly you're interested. And so I think to the extent that we can use those as hooks to sort of drive that interest and build that fandom is what we like to be able to do.
Is it important to reach out through these social networks to get the fans where they are rather than expecting them to come and find you?
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. I think that's just the world we live in now.
So where do you guys see the growth in OTT sports over the next 5 years? What are the growth areas? Either one.
I think we'll see more and more. The means of production are getting less expensive, right? And so I've seen higher and higher quality productions out of fixed cameras and other things where you're not necessarily running sort of a full production crew. You'll see lots more broadcast networks and cable networks doing games on a much lighter telecast, where they don't send announcers, they're just calling them from a remote facility in order to save costs. And so I think as you see the production quality continue to go up, and I think as you see the associated cost continue to go down, that'll give us more and more events to work with. And so then it becomes a matter of what's worthy of attention, what can you drive attention around. And so, but there's certainly some different folks that we've seen in the like high school startup space, where there's certainly lots of high school events and college events where there's a very small number of people who are interested, but the people who are interested are very interested, right? And so I think as you see some of the production quality go up and production costs go down, there'll be a much larger massive content to deal with, but that increases issues on Peter's side and gives him more problems to solve. And then as content marketers and salespeople, gives us a lot more problems to solve on that side with the increased inventory.
So some people are wondering if broadcast is going to lose its prominence as OTT takes off and it becomes so easy to enjoy what you want, when you want, on any device. Peter, you've already said cable is not going anywhere, but is online going to take the role for sports that broadcast has enjoyed?
I think it's going to be much more prevalent. And when we say online, what does that mean? I think you're going to see a lot more of experiences designed around the mobile platform, and not just mobile phone, but connected devices as I move around. That I think is what you're going to see more and more of. I echo what you're saying, is you're going to see a much greater proliferation of the types of events that are carried, and that is something that you may not necessarily get on television, is choice. So that's probably one of the biggest things. And then it's not related to live events, and maybe it's the discussion for the next panel, is content discovery. Because as you start to see more and more of these various types of events, and I've got 28 apps downloaded on my phone and everything, how do I stay connected to the things that are important to me? And content discovery is going to be key for people to connect to audiences.
Okay, let's take our last few seconds. Each of you just give a few words of advice to our audience who want to make their own fortunes in streaming sports. A few words of advice. What have you learned?
Wow, I tried to touch on all those things throughout. I guess to recap is think about not only your technology platforms, but if you want to do things at scale, think about your organizational limitations and what you need for staff. On the technology side, think about how you deal with flash traffic and how you build your platforms so that they can quickly respond by looking at real-time data in your technology environment. And then the last thing I'll say is make sure that you understand who your constituent groups are that consume this content and build all of your reporting and measures around what they need to know, because that's going to help you drive the growth in your business.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And I would just say, overly simplistic, find the right partners, right? And so whether these are the partners that you're working with to actually deliver the events, whether these are the partners that you're working with to license content from or help create content with, that's makes all the difference in the world when you can go into a relationship and knowing, hey, look, 2 or 3 years down the line, we're going to be glad we did this, and we're going to continue to be working together. So.
Excellent advice. I'm sorry we didn't have time for Q&A. I know, Kyle, you'll be at the cocktail hour. Peter, are you going to join us for cocktails?
Unfortunately, I'm not able to
All right,
make it, but I'll stick around here for a couple minutes.
If you have questions for him, rush the stage. And thank you so much, everybody. Thank you for our speakers, and thank you very much.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.